When U.S. Airways Flight 1549 crash-landed into New York's Hudson River, what seemed destined to be a tragedy became an extraordinary tale of success and survival.
It was the worst, sickening, pit of your stomach falling through the floor feeling I've ever felt in my life. I knew immediately it was very bad.
First responders in New York City expected the worst. An Airbus A320 with 155 people on board down in the middle of the frigid Hudson River. Only 5 minutes earlier, Captain Sullenberger had taken off from LaGuardia Airport on a routine flight bound for Charlotte, North Carolina.
It was a normal climb out in every regard, and about 90 seconds after takeoff, I noticed there were birds filling the entire windscreen, from top to bottom, left to right, large birds, too close to avoid.
The airplane was about 3,000 feet over New York City and descending fast. 30 seconds after the engines failed, Captain Sullenberger began urgently looking for someplace to land and radioed air traffic control.
And I said, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Cactus 1549.
Hit birds, we've lost thrust on both engines, returning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220.
220.
Tower, stop your departures, got emergency returning.
But you didn't return to LaGuardia.
No, I quickly determined that due to our distance from LaGuardia and the distance and altitude required to make the turn back to LaGuardia, it would be problematic reaching the runway. And trying to make a runway I couldn't quite make could well be catastrophic to everyone on board and persons on the ground. And my next thought was to consider Teterboro.
What's over to our right? Anything in New Jersey, maybe Teterboro?
Okay, yeah, off your right side is Teterboro Airport. Do you want to try to go to Teterboro?
Yes.
But it soon became clear he couldn't make it to Teterboro either.
Turn right 280, you can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it.
The only viable alternative, the only level, smooth place sufficiently large to land an airliner was the river. I said we're going in the Hudson.
That decision to go in the Hudson was made 2.5 minutes into the flight and just 1 minute after the birds had hit. Sullenberger and his co-pilot, Jeff Skiles, started preparing to land on the water. Do you think about the passengers at that moment?
Not specifically. I mean, more abstractly, perhaps. I mean, I knew I had to solve this problem. I knew I had to find a way out of this box I found myself in.
Did you at any point pray?
I would imagine somebody in back was taking care of that for me while I was flying the airplane.
About 155 people?
I think my focus at that point was so intensely on the landing.
You couldn't think of anything else?
I thought of nothing else.
What were some of the things you had to do to make this landing successful?
I needed to touch down with the wings exactly level. I needed to touch down with the nose slightly up. I needed to touch down at a decent rate that was survivable. And I needed to touch down just above our minimum flying speed, but not below it. And I needed to make all these things happen simultaneously.
90 seconds before hitting the water, Captain Sullenberger made an announcement to the passengers and crew. 3 simple words: brace for impact.
I made the brace for impact announcement in the cabin, and immediately, through the hardened cockpit door, I heard the flight attendants begin shouting their commands in response to my command to brace. Heads down, stay down. I could hear them clearly. They were chanting it in unison over and over again to the passengers to warn them and instruct them. And I felt very comforted by that. I knew immediately that they were on the same page, that if I could land the airplane, that they could get them out safely.
But there was still a big if.
I was sure I could do it.
You were?
Yes.
There couldn't have been a better man for the job, a former Air Force fighter pilot who had spent nearly 30 years flying commercial aircraft, specialized in accident investigations, and instructed flight crews on how to respond to crises in the air.
I think in many ways As it turned out, my entire life up to that moment had been a preparation to handle that particular moment.
That moment was captured by security cameras at 3:30 p.m. on January 15th. Flight 1549 approached the waterline and then landed in the river.
Hitting the water is hard. It was a hard landing. And then we scooted along the surface for some point, and then at some point the nose finally did come down as the speed decreased, and then we turned slightly to the left and stopped.
When you landed, you and the first officer looked at each other.
And we said, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And then we quickly began doing our duties. He was running the evacuation checklist while I opened the door and commanded evacuate.
Did you give yourself even a few seconds, though, to acknowledge that you had averted disaster?
No, because I hadn't quite yet. And I had business to attend to. I had a job to do.